I thought we'd increase the solemnity of today's Mass with incense and the reminder of the icon of Our Lady on behalf of our sisters and brothers in Ukraine going through such a terrible experience. And we ask the Lord to open our eyes. Jesus is funny. He gives us these metaphors. Sometimes we need little illustrations. So I brought one for you. Nothing little here. Okay, if this was in your eye, I couldn't imagine the pain. I took that out of my backyard. It's kind of dirty. And this was in your brother's eye. Jesus is saying, come on, get it straight. You can't see and you can't direct your brother unless you yourself remove the beam from your own eye. Got a story about a splinter. This was in college. I was in Seton Hall University, South Orange, New Jersey, and the guys, it was winter time, the guys said, SCURTI, we're going to go up to the mountain reservation to toboggan. I'm a city boy. I never tobogganed. Sleighs, I did. You know, my father pulled me in the sleigh in the snow. Toboggan, that was a suburban thing, I think. So I said, sure, why not? So I went to toboggan with them, and I watched them. They all, like 4 or 5 people can get on a toboggan, go down the hill. Whoo, great, wonderful experience. Okay, I'll try it. So I sat on the toboggan. I don't know what role I had first, second, third, but I was on the toboggan. Well, I was probably in the middle. You'll know why in a second. And the toboggan went down the hill, speedy, hit a rock. It went up. I went up. I guess the other guys fell off. And the toboggan cracked in half, and a major splinter stuck up in that broken wood. And guess where the splinter landed? Right here. Okay. Major blood all over. Brought to the hospital. Doctors cleaned me up, patched it. And I said, it's not out. I said, no, it's out. Your imagination thinks it's still there, but it's out. Now, this is like winter, maybe March, February. And I said, I don't think it's out. It's go home, you got to take the baths, and you got to sit carefully. And okay, so I'm convinced that they're right. My heart wasn't convinced. Oh, no, my butt was convinced that they weren't right. Okay, so I go about my business, and we put patches and all that, and the semester goes on. During the following summer, so we're talking many months later, I'm with my classmates, and we're on a lake in New Jersey, and on a raft, and I'm on the raft, and some of the guys are looking at me strange. SCURTI, what are you sitting in? I said, what am I sitting? I'm sitting on the raft. There's blood all over. I said, oh my God, maybe I hit a fish or something. You know, again, city boy, I don't fish either. So I look around, the blood was coming from me. I go inshore, they bring me to the hospital. And sure enough, doctor takes care of me, comes out half hour later, and he brings me something a little bigger than this. And he said, why was this in your butt? Had nothing to do with it, so I just shoved it there. I said, that has been there since the winter. I said, we went tobogganing. He said, wow, you held it in your body all that time. Didn't you feel it? I said, yes, I felt it every day. And I kept telling the doctor, it's still there. And the doctor said, no, it's not. It's your imagination. So I'm going to go bring him this and tell him this is not imagination. This is a major splinter. Now, only because it has nothing to do with the story, but I brought it home. Okay, we're on break. I brought it home to my mother, and we're Italian. So you know what this became. This went in her son's bottom. It became a family relic. Not this one, but another one very much like this. She put it in the china closet. She put it in a special glass, and she lit a little candle in front of it. I said, Jesus, I'm not a saint. Oh, but you suffered. Okay. So, okay. The irony of it, the splinter lasted a long time. It bothered me. It got literally under my skin. It caused me to not sit correctly. It made me crooked for a while. Listen to what Jesus is saying about a splinter. How can you remove the splinter in your brother's eye when you don't remove the log from your own eye? The splinter in our eyes affects us. It causes us to be in pain. And when we see a log in our own eye, but focus on the splinter of another person, the concern is twisted because we're not taking care of ourselves first. And I'm thinking, the scriptures speak so well for current events. The first reading, applicable to us, when it says, the fruit of a tree shows its care that it has had. And so does one speak, and their speech disclose their mind. We have in our world right now a major leader, so applicable for the Gospels for us to meditate on and pray for, a major leader who has a log in his eye, and those around him share similar logs. Those who are supporting genocide, those who are supporting removing the autonomy of a country in Eastern Europe. So when we listen to the scriptures, we can very easily say, you know, they're not just nice readings from the first century. Jesus is speaking to us today as Christians. That's why we made sure that we include the icon of Mary as a reminder that the Eastern Europeans who are suffering are here with us in our prayers and in our hearts. And each day, the Lord is asking us to be sensitive to each other. Yes, we should take the splinter out of another's eye, but do this first. Take care of this guy first. In other words, be humble enough to say, I have wronged you. I have done something apathetic. I have walked over the bodies of the poor. I have climbed on people's shoulders and reputations just to get ahead. They're the splinters in our eyes. And we can't say, oh, look at the government, look at the king, look at the pope, look at that. We got to do this first. And that's a pain in the neck. But leave it to Jesus to aggravate us. Leave it to Jesus to put it right down the way it is. And you don't come to church, well, not when I preach anyway. You don't come to church to feel good, okay? I hope we come to church to feel Christ and accept his challenge each day, each time we gather, whether it's his nativity, his resurrection, or an ordinary Sunday as this is. And what is the challenge of Christ? Constantly to be aware of who we are. What comes out of our mouths is important. Go back to the scriptures of the Old Testament. Go back to the first reading, Sirach. The fruit that comes out of our mouths is based on the fertility of our hearts. Jesus reiterates that. Every tree is known for its own fruit. People don't pick figs from thorn bushes. A good person, out of the goodness of his heart, produces good fruit. And that's us. I'm sorry, we're called to be good people. If you're not a good person, good. You came to Mass, beginning of Mass, we say, Lord, have mercy. And that's for all of us, right across the board, from the youngest to the oldest. Because there's some aspects of our lives that at times are nasty, are judgmental, are not forgiving. And this is for us. This is for us. We don't come here to make God feel good. He needs nothing. He doesn't need you, me, or anything else. God is God. We come because we want to be part of God, and we want to listen to his word and bring that word into our lives and into our actions when we relate to one another. When we see on the international stage the bombing in Ukraine, our hearts should beat faster and with sympathy. And whatever we can do, whether through a Ukrainian parish or through Caritas Ukraine, which is Catholic Charities, whatever we can do, but prayer always, we should do. If we have any contacts in Eastern Europe, let them know we're praying for them. Let them know that we're one with them. Comfort is important. What comes out of our mouth should represent what's in our hearts. The fruit of our prayer should be reflective in our actions. That's why we're being reminded by the scriptures. When the scriptures were put together, this is, as you know, this is cycle C. Every 3 years we have a different cycle of readings. And this was put together after Vatican II, like 50 years ago. Did the author and the editors put it together and knowing that today, this day in history, we'd be focused on an independent country being attacked and molested? Did we know, the authors know, that a leader of a major world power who has a log in his eye and sin on his mouth, anyone who ascribes to the murder of innocent people, is sinful? Not to quote a non-theologian, paraphrase the Ukrainian ambassador last week at the UN to the Russian ambassador, telling him, for people who murder in war, there is no purgatory. You go straight to hell. I was shocked. He's being told on the world stage, you're going to hell, leaders of Russia. And be careful. We're not talking about Russians. We're talking about the leaders. We're talking about the politicians. And regrettably, they filter their philosophy throughout their country. And you know as well as I do, look at the papers, look at the news, that Russians are not 100% in support of this genocide. They're one people. Historically, they're Eastern Europeans. We can do our own history, not like the leader of Russia did his history, his version. This all belongs to Russia anyway. Yeah, are you nuts? Are you nuts? Cyril and Methodius converted the Slavs. The faith spread out from there, and Eastern Europe became Christian through the intervention of Cyril and Methodius 1,000 years ago. They didn't become Russian, they became Christian. And through history, you know history, through history, this nation was here, this nation was here, and they rose up as independent, proud people. And we should be honoring them. And through that period, which I grew up, some of you did, Cold War, the biggest fear was communism and the Soviet bloc. Remember all those words? Well, the leader of Russia today wants to bring that back. And I was in Russia when the wall came down, right after the wall came down. And it was beautiful, but when you look to the ground, when you look to earth, when you look eye to people, they were vacant. They were vacant. They were still, after 5 decades of communism and torture and being put down and oppressed and forbidden to attend church, forbidden to keep their faith alive. And you see them waiting for a bus like this. The fear that was instilled in them that you're being watched, you're being listened to, and no one is free. And when we went outside the churches, we saw little cameras. They weren't security cameras like we have in our buildings now. They were cameras to see who goes to church because they will get less of a ration because they will not hold a political position. This is in Russia and Ukraine. We visited all that area. Beautiful people, great food, great pivo, sensitive people, a culture unto itself that really honored their heritage and God, their love for Mary beyond all bounds. Their church is still, thank God, I don't know how it happened, were not destroyed. Most of them were not destroyed. And when you see a picture of the Ukraine or you see a picture of Russia, you see some of the domes of that culture, the onion domes they call it. So the buildings are still there, but the souls of the people that were devastated during those decades of communism is still lingering. So imagine the fear in the hearts of the elderly who are there now. Yes, they're watching their kids going down to bunkers to hide. Yes, they're watching their kids trying to understand what's going on, but they already went through it. And it's coming back, is their fear. So we're with them. And the scriptures are telling us, don't you dare remove the splinter of somebody else's eye to say, oh, Russia's doing this, Russia's doing. And I'm going to be careful. It's not Russia. It's the leaders of Russia. And leave the log in your own eye. So our prayers have to be substantiated with action. Our words have to be substantiated with our positive belief in our sisters and brothers who are suffering an unimaginable toll. So we're with them. And as we leave Mass today, we have to remember a good person, not saints, hopefully we'll all become saints one day, a good person, all of us here, we're called to be good, a good person out of the good storage of his heart produces good. That's all God wants from us. To be good, do good, and pray for good in one another. This is why we come to church, to be touched by the Holy Spirit and leave changed, a little better than we came.